Hello and welcome to this Microsoft Teams Chalk Talk, Apps and Teams Fundamentals. My name is Abby Sweeney. I'm a Program Manager within Teams Engineering, and I'll be taking you through this session today. So before we get into the content, let's have a look at what I want you to get out of this session. So firstly, I want you to be able to understand what are apps and teams and what are those common scenarios that are addressed by apps and teams. I want you to then be able to identify some applications that might fit in with your own organizational needs, and also understand what does it look like once you deploy that, what is success. We can then look at the next steps to deploy the app into your environment and what's required, and also look at the security and compliance considerations for our third-party applications. Now, before any of that, I want to go through a couple of myths that we always hear when we do sessions, when we do engagements with customers around applications and teams. The first one, allowing third-party applications will create licensing headaches. Apps will access all of my confidential files and conversations. Apps will access all of my personal information and send spam, and it's inconvenient and messy to uninstall an application after setting it up. So let's attack the first one. Many applications actually in Teams don't have a cost. So they either don't cost anything or you already have the enterprise license. So what I mean by that is, let's take Salesforce as an example. If you're using Salesforce in the browser or in the desktop, then you already have the right enterprise license to use that within Teams. So you can integrate it without any extra cost. In terms of confidentiality, applications do get access to your files, but only when you explicitly send it to the service. So that means if I'm having a one-on-one chat with my coworker and I pull in a file and the bot is part of that conversation, if I send a file, I will get a notification saying, you are about to share this content with X application. Would you still like to send? And I can say yes or no. And that will happen regardless of the number of times you send a file. It doesn't stop. So it's actually very clear when you are sharing that information, and we'll get into that a bit later on in the session. App developers do get some access to information, but it is very basic personal information. It's just the exact same as the desktop application, the desktop store. Sending spam violates the App Store policies, and it will result in that application getting taken down. So we follow exactly the same sort of code violations and security concerns as the desktop store. And finally, when we're looking at uninstalling applications, actually it's really easy. A user can uninstall an application with 2 clicks themselves on their own client, and then an admin can uninstall an application with 2 clicks for the whole tenant. So it's actually super easy. So I'm firstly going to take you here through what are applications, what's the background on applications and teams, what are they, how do they work, and why should we include them. Then we can look at the management of the applications. What are the security and compliance pieces, and then how can we manage those policies? And then we can have a little touch on the custom application lifecycle and see how we support custom apps and teams. So let's jump right into the first part, background on applications. So when we think of Teams, we often hear of it in light of its core workloads. So communication through meetings, chat, and calling. And then we have the collaboration piece, which is where we have these Office 365 applications deeply integrated into the platform. And we sort of hear of it as this sort of work better together mode, using powerful productivity tools to bring everything together in one platform. Now, where Teams goes that next step further, we can view it in this sort of extensibility platform. So in the middle, we have the user with the communication as the first layer. We can then help collaborate with files and documents by adding, all of these first-party integration tools like Excel and OneNote, etc. We then go one step further, where we do more with these applications, get more work done by connecting all of these systems and processes through the integration of third-party applications and having the ability to connect everything together and have this single pane of glass to get all of your work done. So let's take a look at that in terms of the application breakup. So when we think of applications and teams, we often break it down into 3 main buckets. The first one is the Microsoft applications. So these are those first-party applications that you're already using, probably either in or out of Teams. Things like Excel, PowerPoint, OneNote, OneDrive, 50 of these available, and they're already out of the box for you to use in Teams. We then have this middle bucket, which is the third-party applications. And this is where we really go that one step further. And we have a whole other session on the third-party applications called Supercharge Your Key Workflows with Apps and Teams. And I'll give you the link to that later, because if you're interested in third-party application integration, that's a great session. So we have over 700 of these available currently, but we're constantly integrating more. So you'll see this number increase quite a lot over the next few months. So third-party applications, think about Salesforce, think about Trello, think about HR applications like Workday, Asana, all of those different pieces. Then we have this third bucket, which is the custom applications. And this is really where we have those unlimited possibilities. And the custom applications we break down into 3 branches. The first one, the Power Platform. The Power Platform is low and no code way to create custom applications to then integrate within your environment. So think of Power BI for dashboarding, think of Power Apps for drag and drop type applications, and think of Power Automate to automate those workflows in your organization. So very little developer experience needed to be able to execute a Power Platform application. We then have the second branch, which is the app template. And again, on the same vein as the Power Platform, low and no code applications where you're able to customize on top of our work. So for example, if we want to create an HR support bot, we can take the HR support template and we can build on top of that to customize to our own organization. So again, you need very little developer experience, again, low and no code, so you can sort of customize on top of what you already have. And then of course we have the third branch, the building from scratch. And of course we're able to keep the ability to develop from the ground up. You're able to create complete LOB application within Teams if you want to have that, and if you have that extended developer knowledge. So we've really got a whole host of different ways that we can develop within Teams. Now, the next thing that's on your mind is probably, okay, brilliant. We have these custom applications. How do we publish them to the store? Or sorry, publish them to our tenant and to our client? So there's a couple of different ways. The first way is to the store. So this is, of course, the most public way. This is where if you publish an application to the store, anyone who uses Microsoft Teams will be able to use that application. Of course, not with all of your custom data and your company data, but anything that you have included in that the bare bones of the application will be available to anyone if you post it to the store. We then have this middle one, and this is most likely, or most probably the most common that we see, and this is publishing to a tenant. So that will be available for any users under your tenant. So anything that is controlled by your tenant admins will be able to have access to that application. And then we have the third one, publishing to a team. This is probably where we see it a little less frequently, because it's, a very rare cases that we need it, but a couple of situations where we do see publishing to a team as useful are for testing purposes. So if we have an application that we want to test with some friendly users prior to pushing it out to the whole organization, we could put them all into a team, and then we could push the application to the team and they can test just within that siloed location. Another good example is maybe if you have a role-specific application. So if we have a sales application, we can maybe push it to the sales team rather than pushing it to the whole tenant. And what that looks like from a client point of view. So here we're in the Microsoft Teams client, as you can see, and I'm in the App Store. The way that I've got there, 2 ways to get there. Either I click this little ellipsis and I click more apps, or I click the app source down here. Here is where we can see all of the applications that are available to us as an organization. So anything that our admins have allowed will show up in here. So you can see a little what's new bit here. We can see the all applications here. this built for Contoso up here is where you will see your custom applications. And then along here, you can determine by vertical and extensibility, or horizontal, sorry, and extensibility. So here, if I want, for example, a project management application, I can click here. If I want a sales application, I can click here, and it will filter them all out. We also have the ability to filter by extensibility, and I will go through that in a minute. And then this little button down here is how you can upload a custom application. I will go through the custom application piece at the end, but essentially, if a user has a custom application they want to upload to their tenant, they can upload it here. It will go to the tenant admin. The tenant admin can then approve or deny it, and it will either show up in here if it's approved, or if it's denied, it will not. Looking at the extensibility points, as I just mentioned, there's a couple of different ways where applications can interact with users in Microsoft Teams. So the first one, and one of the most common, is as a bot. So bots, think of ServiceNow, think of Jira, think of Workday. All of these have Teams bots. And what will happen is you can see here that I have Contoso. The Contoso bot is part of my conversation history. So I am able to chat to the bot and get my tasks done in a conversational-like manner. And I'm going to go through each of these in a demo, each of these extensibility points in a demo, so don't worry if you're a little bit confused at this point. The second one is tabs, and tabs are within the channel pane now. So you can see here, I'm in Teams, I'm in the Northwind Traders team, and I'm in marketing. So when I'm in marketing, I can go along the top of the tabs and I can see that I have an application tab for Contoso. So we can have all of that content within Teams, and I can actually have different boards showing, or different parts of the application showing dependent on the channel. So for example, in this channel, I'd have the marketing board, and then I'd go to the ship room channel and I'd have a ship room board. So we can change it per channel. Then lastly, we have the message extensions. So message extensions allow users to query and share information as rich cards. So at the bottom of a channel conversation, or at the bottom of a chat conversation, you'll be able to see application message extensions where you can share links very easily, you can tag people to stuff very easily, you can edit stuff very easily, a couple of different things. So I'm going to show a demo of all of these in a minute. Next, we have the activity feed. So the activity feed is this little icon in the top left-hand corner of your client. And this is where you're able to engage users via activity feed notifications. So either we can push it through an application, very similar to when we do a chat, or you can have activity feeds for like, you know, when you've been assigned a task, when you've completed a task, lots of different things here. So you can have those application notifications come through the activity feed. Adaptive cards. This is where users are able to take action within cards in a channel or a chat. So here we can see that Daniela has posted a conversation. She's posted an adaptive card within it, and I can actually edit within that adaptive card to take that action within the adaptive card. I don't have to post anything myself. I can simply edit within hers. So it's a great way of being able to quickly take action on posts that have been broadcasted. And then lastly, we have personal applications. So we have the ability to collate all of our content across all of our teams and channels into one place. So we can see here that all of my tasks, whether it's from Contoso, whether it's from another application, all of them surface in this one area. So it's a great way of being able to collate everything and have one single place for all of your tasks. So really, no matter what the application or no matter what the location, those applications can appear everywhere. No matter what the change of location, the app can still be there, whether it's chat, whether it's personal, whether it's team. Okay. So looking at these applications, one of the best things about the integration of applications in Teams and the extensibility points is that because they are so immersive and they're built on top of the Office 365, we have the ability to actually integrate our own LOB applications to manage, as well as other integrated services like AI capabilities. We can bring it all together in this one platform for users to take advantage of. So let's jump into the first demo. So I'm going to demo the different extensibility points that I just mentioned, and I'm going to be using Trello mainly for this. So we can see here that I'm in the Teams client. I am signed in as Megan, and I have all of my different icons on the left-hand side here. So I'm going to go into Teams, and I'm part of this. Where's it gone? Here we go. I'm part of this Mark 8 project team. And as part of this team, I have been working on the offsite planning. So we have this offsite planning channel where we discuss all of our tasks, all of our things that need to get done. And we also have up here, you can see we have a lot of different tabs. So we have the conference planning board tagged here. And this is where we have all of our sort of tasks and action items. So it is on Trello, so you can see I haven't, because I've just logged into Teams, it hasn't authenticated me yet. So I'm going to click log into Trello, and I get this little window to log in. So I'm going to say continue with Microsoft, so I can use my credentials, single sign-on. So once I've done that, it will ask me if I want to use that account. I will say yes, click that account. It will then look at authenticating me, and it will let me go straight through. So here you can see that we have the Trello board exactly the same as we would in the browser. So we have our conference planning 2020, and we have all of our lists broken up to do, doing, done, need support. And it's very easy for us to chop and change between lists, to edit lists, to add another card, to delete a card, archive it, whatever it is that we want to do here, the exact same as we can in the browser. We can then also change views to see our calendar, so we can see when all of these different things are due. For example, if we go up, I'm too far now, but we have different calendar views essentially, and then we can go back to the board as well. So we've got all of the different views there that we need to within Trello. What we can also do is if I, for example, I'm trying to find some information and I can't quite find it, I have the Trello bot here. So as I showed you in the theory, in the slide deck, we have the Trello board here as a bot. So I basically want to ask the Trello bot, I know there's something to do with conference venues, but I can't remember exactly what it is. So I'm going to start the conversation with hi to just get it going. And once the bot starts talking back, I'm going to say, okay, can you search for venue? Because I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's something to do with venue. So then the Trello board, oh, and brilliant, it comes back, the close on conference venue, and it needs to be done by February 10th. So if I click on it, I can see that I'm overdue. I can do all of these edits if I want to, or I can just leave it and see that I've got that information. If I click on it, it will take me back to the board. So what I'm actually going to do is I need Adele to help me with this. She was supposed to work on that. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to go to Adele and I'm going to say, hey, Adele, need you to work on closing the venue, please. And then I'm going to, along here, find the message extension for Trello. So it's there. I can either find sort of a list of ones that are relevant there, or I can also search the string. If I type in venue, it comes up, and I'm going to send that to Adele. So now Adele can see my message, and she can also comment, edit, view in Trello, all of the information on that board. So it's super easy, super simple for us to be able to connect with the Trello bot, to use a message extension. And then the other message extension that you're able to do is if we just go back to the offsite planning posts, we can start a new conversation and the message extension will be there as well. So we can add it into a channel too. So multiple different ways that we're able to use the extensibility within Teams. Okay, so coming back to the presentation. So now we've sort of gone through what the applications are, what are apps in Teams. We can now look into managing those applications. So here you can see that I'm in the admin center for Teams. And along the left-hand side here, we have this whole section dedicated to Teams apps. So if we jump into this top one, the managing applications, this is where we're able to see all of the applications that have been approved and blocked for our organization. So we can see here we have all of these are approved, but this one here is blocked for 365 Q&A, which means that when we go into the app store, which I showed you earlier, you should not, from the client, you will not see this 365 Q&A. We then have this button up here, the org-wide app settings, and when you click on that, you have this view. So this is where you're able to set org-wide application settings, meaning across your whole tenant. So for example, if you don't want any third-party applications to be installed in your tenant and you don't want to block them piece by piece, you could just turn them off completely. You could turn off interaction with custom apps, all of those different pieces. Now, we don't usually recommend using org-wide settings to control applications because it does eliminate options for admins to have special rights like testing rights. In rare cases, it might make sense, but often we say you should do it more granularly, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, if we come into the managing apps piece where we can see all the allowed applications, we can also see the different permissions required per application. So if we click on the details of an application, we can see here the permissions are very accurately and sort of transparently placed here. So the application will maintain access to data you've given it, it will sign in and read the user profile, and it will read and write access to the user profile. We also have this little bit down here, the Microsoft Graph resource-specific consent permissions, and this is where we're able to see or consent access for an app and to modify a team's data. So read names, read team members, read owners, etc. So all of this information is very transparent and it's placed very easily for users and admins to see. Now, look at what that means. What is a trusted application? What are the consent? There's two sort of building blocks here. The first one is this M365 publisher attestation, and this is developer provided security across 90 different vectors in a single location. So it's already integrated with our Microsoft Cloud App Security, and it's available for the majority of web applications that leverage Graph APIs, as well as our first-party applications listed down here. So that's sort of the first step in the security of an application in Teams. And then we have the second step, which is actually the Microsoft 365 certification. So this is where we have all of these different application security. So things like GDPR compliance, patch management compliance, looking at data retention and disposal, looking at data access and approval. And what that looks like from an individual app perspective is something similar to this. So here you can see with the ADP Virtual Assistant, and if you don't know what that is, ADP is essentially an HR and payroll provider, which you're able to integrate within Teams. So here we can see the app name is ADP, we see all of the extensibilities, the URLs, etc. But then on the right-hand side here is where we can see all of the security and compliance policies. So we can see that it we can track its user and data audit trail. We have a trusted certificate. It's GDPR compliant. You can see all of these different things here. So it's a really great way of being able to make sure that the security and compliance is up to scratch for your organization because it meets what Microsoft standards are. And if you want to find out a little bit more information about that, feel free to go to aka.ms/Teams app certification. We've got a really good blog there about the different types of compliance and security that goes into each application and how that can help your organization. Now, if we hit this second tab under Teams applications, this is the permission policies. So this is where you can control what applications are available and to whom. So in here, we have the ability to align permission policies to groups. So you can see this is the default. The default is is published by Microsoft Teams, and you haven't made any changes to it. That's where everything's allowed. You can then start adding application policies per user group. So here we can see an IT test policy, for example. And what that looks like when you come in here is it's split up by the 3 buckets again that we saw earlier. And within the 3 buckets, there's these 4 options. The first one is allow all applications. The second one is block all applications and only allow a whitelist. The third one is block, allow all applications and only block a specific couple, and the fourth one is block all applications. So if I show you what this looks like in a permission policy, I have this sales team permission policy. I'm allowing all the Microsoft applications. I'm blocking all third-party applications except for these four that I'm whitelisting. And then I'm allowing all custom applications. So that's what it will look like in the permission policy when you go to edit it. Then we can manage the users that we align that to. So we'd hit the sales team permission policy, manage the users, and this is where we can add all of the users. Now, it's important to know at this point that we have to do it manually through here. We can't align it to or assign it to an AAV group. It's not something we can do at the moment. However, if you are proficient in PowerShell, you'll be able to bulk apply policies to multiple users via PowerShell. So you are able to do that through PowerShell, but in the admin portal, at the moment, we can only manually add users. And when we look at the policy precedents, this is what it looks like. So org-wide app settings are the most strict. For example, if you have an org-wide app setting to block all third-party applications, if you then have a custom permission policy that allows a certain third-party application, it still will not be allowed because you've blocked it from an org-wide perspective. And then the least blocking is the default, or the least precedence is default permission policy. So custom overrides default, org-wide overrides custom. Now, looking at the third tab that we have here is the setup policies. So setup policies are where we're able to customize the team's interface. So we can sort of customize with applications that are important for your organization and make them more visible for your users. So what this looks like here, this probably looks similar to the Teams client that you've got. You're able to chop and change what you want in here. So you can see we have the default 6, and we've also added the now virtual agent at the bottom. We've also allowed users to be pinning too, so they're allowed to pin their own. So what that looks like from a client perspective is exactly the same. So you can see we've got the 6, and then we have the now virtual agent. And the best part about this is it's across all of your devices. So the setup policies allow you to customize your menu bar on desktop and mobile so that you display those tools which are most relevant to your users. So you can see here that we have Adobe Sign and Seismic. And here you've got the Adobe Sign there, and Seismic will be under that More button. So it's great that we have the ability to do that across all devices. FAQs that we always see here. The first one is how long does it take for a policy to propagate? We always say several hours. However, often it's much quicker. We say several hours just in case it does take longer, but I usually see it happen instantly, if not within like 5 to 10 minutes. But it can take up to a couple of hours, depending on the policy. As I mentioned, we can't currently apply policies to distribution groups or security groups, but we can use scripts in PowerShell to apply those policies in bulk. So you do have that option if you're proficient in PowerShell, but we just can't do that from the admin center as of yet. And then how many apps can be pinned. So by that, it means along this left-hand side, there's actually no limit. It is unlimited, but just be aware that, of course, you're going to run into the screen size. And we usually say around sort of 11 to 12 applications will fit pinned along the average screen size. However, if you do have more, they'll just drop into that ellipsis there. So you can have unlimited, but just be aware of the average screen size. One thing that's really cool within the admin center around the apps and the analytics and report is we're able to see app usage within Teams. So we can see here Microsoft and third-party applications, and we're able to see, you know, this is probably the weekend, these dips. We're able to see the applications. So let's take this, for example. I can see Freehand by Envision. I have 79 active users using Freehand Envision, so using Azure Active Directory, but only 1 active in Teams. So this is probably my thinking is, okay, I need to do some more training around why users should be using Freehand in Teams rather than using it in the browser so that we can drive up this active in Teams number. Okay. So let's jump into now data and what data leaves the tenant, what doesn't. So looking into what data leaves the corporate network, we split it up into three really. So bots and message extensions. Messages, as we mentioned earlier, messages sent to bots do leave the corporate network because the bot has access to those messages, as well as files sent to the bot as well. I will reiterate that any files that are sent to the bot, the user is asked for approval after every single file sent. So it's not a one and done situation. It's you do get asked every single file you sent. Connectors, no data leaves the network when connected to posts in the channel, and tab applications, as I mentioned earlier, are very similar to the browser application, which means the risk profile is very similar when running the application in the browser. So it gets very basic information like the UPN, the tenant ID, the Office 365 group ID, and a couple of other pieces. And if you want to know a little bit more in depth around the app permissions and what leaves the corporate network, I would highly recommend going to this link here, aka.ms/teams app permissions. This is where you will find all of the information. It's a really deep dive blog into sort of what leaves the network, what is the risk profile of each type of application, and other pieces. So make sure you go there if you want more information. Now, what this looks like to the end user, I'm currently in the client and I have Asana pulled up here. You can see at the top that we have the capabilities. So we can see that the application is present as a tab, a bot, and a message extension. And they can also see the permissions. So the user can see permissions straight out really easily. It's very transparent and easy for the users to see there. So what we want to look into now with the management in applications and third party especially is how do we structure this? So when we look at the risk of applications in Teams, here's what I would probably do. So firstly, we want to look at the app architecture in Teams. So what is the privacy, the security and compliance aligned with it? Firstly, that's super important. What the app can do, the app capabilities, the app scope and the app permission. What extensibilities does it have? Where is it present and what information can it access? Then we can look at what do we know about the developer. Has this been internally approved through our own InfoSec and procurement channels? I know that that's often the case within organisations. And then also, what do we know about this app developer? Have they got their own security and compliance? And then we also want to look at what apps users rely on. So we want to look at the how frequently applications are used, should we integrate them within Teams, and sort of go with what is feedback from your own users. Okay, so that's sort of the management and security piece done. And the last part of this session that I want to jump into is the custom app lifecycle. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a huge ability for custom apps to be present within Teams. And we have seen a lot of organisations building their own custom applications in Teams as a way to bring productivity workflows into Teams, since everyone is already collaborating there. And whether that's a build from scratch, whether that's an app template build, whether it's a Power Platform build, we're seeing a lot of these custom applications. And up until sort of the last year or so, there hadn't really been a great way to connect all of the sort of internal developers who are building the applications to the IT department who are enabling these applications, and then to the end users who are discovering those applications. It was all a little bit disjointed, but we've just introduced something brand new, or just about a year ago, and it's called the Teams App Submission API. So if we look at the Teams app lifecycle, we have this first section here, the developers, where they're developing and testing and validating. We then see that submitted, and the decision makers and the IT admins can then validate whether this is a good app for the business, whether it tests correctly. We can then publish it and set up and manage it within the sort of user build. And then we have the end users who can discover and adopt that application. So that's where the Teams App Submission API comes in. So we have on the left-hand side here, whatever you're using to develop your application. And this API is a new entry point. It's built on on Microsoft Graph. So it allows organizations to build your proper submission to approval pipeline for your custom applications on Teams. And as I just said, because it's built on Graph, the API is flexible enough to plug into any of your existing processes. So anything that you're currently using to manage your app lifecycles, anything you're using to develop, it will plug into. So you can see here, all of your development platforms will then get submitted into the app submission API and then goes into the tenant app catalog. So what that looks like from a real-time perspective is here we're in Visual Studio and we have this app being submitted to the request submitted to IT. That then comes to the admin portal. We can see the application in the admin portal. We see that the status is submitted, and we can either reject or publish it as an admin. That will then, if it then gets published, it will get published through to our end users, and they can go in and go into the App Store and use it themselves. So that's the custom app lifecycle, a very quick overview of it. If you want to know more, I highly recommend going and looking up some app templates on our docs page, as well as the Power Platform page as well. So where do you go from here? What's next? Well, some key takeaways from this session. I hope that you understand now what those common scenarios are that can be addressed by applications and teams and why it's useful. What your considerations are for enabling applications in Teams and for your users. And then also what the security and compliance considerations are for your enabled applications. I put a couple of resources here. This additional Chalk Talks piece is important, aka.ms/teams Chalk Talks. That is where you're able to go and find some more classes that we teach. The one around third-party applications I spoke about earlier in the session is there. We have some audio, video sessions, we have some quality sessions, so it's really, really useful. And if you want to download the deck that I've just been through, please go to https aka.ms/do more with applications, do more with apps, and that is where you will be able to download this deck that I've just been through. Other than that, thank you so much for attending. I hope you found it useful. I hope you learned some things, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.